And while the DNC is still scrambling to release results from yesterday's Iowa caucuses, candidates are already looking toward New Hampshire, where the next primary is happening a week from today. It's the second state to pick a favorite among the Democratic presidential hopefuls, and a CBS News poll in the Granite State shows Senator Sanders with a narrow lead over former Vice President Joe Biden. Our political correspondent Ed O'Keefe is working around the clock. He was in Iowa yesterday. He now joins us from Manchester, New Hampshire. Ed, I hope you have a lot of coffee in you.
We're going to get some after this, Laura.
All right. So does this mess in Iowa, is it going to change anything that's happening now in New Hampshire?
Well, look, the goal certainly for candidates who would have done well enough in Iowa with verified absolute results was to come here and be victorious and use that victory to sort of slingshot them into Tuesday's primary here in New Hampshire. But with no verifiable results and the possibility that we may never get completely accurate and reliable and complete data from Iowa, it's as if they now have only a week to fight a fresh contest. There's no incentive for somebody to drop out just yet. There's nobody who can declare outright victory, although several rival camps this morning are trying to do that in different ways. And it is very likely that the situation in Iowa will end up in court unless the Iowa Democratic Party can produce the results for the first round of caucusing, that second round that sets the delegate count, and then, of course, the final count on who exactly gets what. Part of the concern back in Iowa is that there may not be paper verification for each of the rounds of voting in the roughly 1,700 precincts across the state. So unless the state can, pardon it, but it's true, show the receipts, it is likely that at least one of these campaigns, likely the Biden campaign, could take this whole situation to court. That's a legal fight. It's also a PR fight. They would like to diminish the results of Iowa as much as possible because they're not going to do well there. Sanders and Buttigieg will. And so by raising concerns and trying to drag that process out, the hope is that Biden can sort of divert attention to New Hampshire, to Nevada, to South Carolina, where he's poised to do better.
Well, without the receipts, as you said, what are the polls saying?
Here in New Hampshire?
Yes.
Yeah. Essentially the same lineup as we had in Iowa. Bernie Sanders on top, Joe Biden right behind him, Elizabeth Warren and Pete Buttigieg are factors as well. Remember, here in New Hampshire, geography comes into play. Bernie Sanders is from the west in Vermont. Elizabeth Warren is from the south in Massachusetts. Both of them are poised to do well here. They're well-known figures because media markets bleed into each other. They've spent time up here. They are familiar to a lot of people who work in either of those states or are familiar with their work. Biden has a mixed track record in this state, never really got this far, frankly, in any election that he ran in before for president. And Buttigieg has spiked since the summer, in part because he was doing so well in Iowa and was starting to earn some attention from this state who wanted to get a look at what exactly Iowa was so fascinated by. So he was hoping to come in here today, where he's holding at least 6 events at last count, come in as the fresh new face who was victorious in Iowa and try to compel this state to vote for him as well. We'll see exactly how it goes, but clearly now they all understand they have about another week to go when they're going to be competing against the State of the Union tomorrow night, the final impeachment vote, and they all have to spend Friday night together on a debate stage.
And Ed, based on what you're seeing and what you're hearing on the ground, which of the candidates has the best operation in New Hampshire to either surge ahead or keep their momentum?
Well, certainly Sanders and Warren, again, have good ground operations here, in part because they're well-known. They've been organizing in this state, Warren especially, at least that's the early read. Buttigieg, thanks to the money he's raised and the interest he's generated, has managed to build a decent-sized team. There will be questions about the Biden operation because it was exposed in Iowa as pretty weak and unorganized. And we'll see whether he has a better operation in this state in the coming days, or if much of this is driven by his name recognition and his own ability to go out and campaign on his behalf. But certainly the Sanders and the Warren campaigns probably in better shape than most. Remember, the level of organizing you have to do in a primary state is far less than you have to do in a caucus state, where you have to get down to the precinct level and find people in each of those roughly 1,700 spots in Iowa. You don't have to do that here in New Hampshire. Here it's just a simple go to the ballot box anytime on primary day and cast your vote. More traditional, something that most of these candidates are far better at than caucuses.
All right, Ed, thank you.